recordings of class uploaded. Fun fact, because I am not a big YouTube influencer, I can only upload so many videos per day. So I will try to work on getting the rest of them up today. Go ahead and get our captions rolling in a sec here. Okay. So today, we have just a little bit of the last lecture that we're going to finish. And then we will start in talking about our next section, which is looking at traumatic brain injuries and things along those lines. So just getting everything here. Time for all of the things, apparently. There we go. And before I dive into everything, I am just going to get us all on the same page about the syllabus, since we're about halfway through the semester. Your midterm report should be posted now, I believe. If not, you can see where you are with everything on Blackboard. There we go. Okay. All right, so we are here, basically. We are going to be focusing in on finishing off neglect and attention, and then we will go into neurological disorders. We'll cover recovery of function and psychiatric disorders, learning disabilities, and then we'll be starting to get into your group presentations. So again, make sure that we're well within a group and that you all are thinking about, by the end of October, meeting with me with an outline for your group presentation. And you can just sign up for a group meeting at a time that works for everyone in your group via Calendly. Your short paper was technically due Monday. Again, you have time. But do remember that is a thing that you need to do. Last time I taught this class, I think you all are already better than the last time I taught this class. I'm not even joking that like 3/4 of the class didn't turn it in till the end of the semester, and that they all hated themselves for it because you have a whole bunch of other stuff at the end of the semester. So, give yourself time to knock that out. So yeah, you will be giving me the article for your group in a few weeks, and then your handouts. And yeah, you all will be taking the time to do your group presentation. So I'm looking forward to that. But just sort of keeping in mind everything that you have coming up. Any questions about logistics before we dive into everything? Alrighty. Well, I am going to just get us to the next section because I showed you all the neglect videos last time. But there are a couple terms that I wanted to make sure we stopped and took some time to talk about from your chapter and from your SGA. So these are some of the other disorders and symptoms that can come from issues with the parietal lobe. So one is afferent paresis. So this is clumsy finger movements due to lack of feedback about where your fingers are in space. Clumsy finger movements due to lack of feedback about finger position. I'm never good at spelling things, but I'm even worse when I'm up here. There we go. All right, asterognosis is your inability to recognize an object by touch. So, maybe I show you this and you're like, oh, that's your phone. But if I put it in your hand, you'd be like, I have no idea what that is. So sort of the opposite of some of those aphasias we talked about earlier in the semester. Simultaneous extinction. Is where two stimuli would be applied simultaneously to the opposite sides of your body. So maybe like back of both hands at the same time. And people who are experiencing this will only be able to report it on one side. So a failure to report the stimulus on one side is referred to as extinction. Blind touch is the touch equivalent of blind sight. This is where you cannot feel stimuli, but you can tell people where they are, right? So just like with blind sight, if you were like, tell me where the stimulus is, and they're like, I can't see over there. I'm like, well, just point, and you point to where it is. Same thing with this. It's like, you can't feel where it is. And they're like, show me where it is. And they're like, come on, I can't feel it. And like, they're able to point to where it is. And then asymptomagnosia. This is a fun combination of things. It's a loss of knowledge or sense of one's own body. As part of this, you can have anosognosia. Which is unawareness or denial that anything that is wrong. Could be illness, could be neglect, right? You just, no, nothing's wrong. And then anosogdiaphoria. Is indifference to illness. So anosognosia is, I'm not sick. What are you talking about? There's nothing wrong. And then anosogdiaphoria is, I'm sick, but what else? Like this person could be dying, and they'd be like, I'm dying. Right. And this isn't psychological. This isn't like any kind of mental illness or coping mechanism. This is something in the brain that doesn't let them understand the severity of what's going on. And then you can have asymbolia. Specifically for pain. And this is the absence of normal reactions to pain. And again, something in your brain is going on. It's not that in a specific area you've lost your ability to touch, right? It's in your brain. Well, that's what's going on. And then there is finger agnosia. And that's where you're unable to point to your own fingers or show them to the examiner. They asked you, where are your fingers? It's sort of be like, oh no. Again, very different experience. And then there's a couple really complicated syndromes they talk about here. One is balance syndrome. Maybe do this so folks can see what I'm writing. There we go. So balance syndrome is where you have a whole bunch of different things. You can't fixate on a particular visual stimulus. You have neglect for objects and optic ataxia. There's also something called Gerstmann syndrome. In Gerstmann syndrome, you have finger agnosia. You have right-left confusion. You also have agraphia, which is difficulty writing. Well, actually, agraphia is inability to write. Dysgraphia would be difficulty writing. Acalculia, you can't do any kind of math computations. And that results from a left parietal lobe lesion, Gerstmann syndrome. And you can have something that's just called contralateral neglect. And this is neglect for visual, auditory, and some aesthetic stimulation on one side of your body. So it's not just one modality. It's not just one of your senses. It's basically all of them. And so, and it can be the space around that side of the body as well. During recovery, these patients will go through beginning to respond to the neglected stimuli as if they were on the other side of the body, which is so interesting. So they'll go from like, I don't recognize anything on the left side of my body, for example, to they start to recognize it, but they think it's on the right side of the body. And then they'll get that simultaneous extinction. The lesion here is more often in the right inferior parietal lobe. If anyone really cares about the nitty-gritty details, it's the right interparietal succulus and the right angular gyrus. Never going to ask you about something that nuanced on an exam, but just for people who are curious. This is also sometimes occasionally noted after lesions to the frontal lobe and cingulate cortex. So you'd kind of have to have it in both places. So you have defective sensation or perception and defective attention or orientation. And so real quick here, I do have a couple slides that'll help us take a look at some of this stuff. And then we can move on to our next section here. Nope. I need to remember to like give it a slight breather, because otherwise it likes to just move stuff around for me. There it is. And so here are actually the pictures I was looking for when we were talking about neglect in general. So you can draw a clock one. Here's another example of a daisy and a house where the person just hasn't been able to copy both sides because they are just not paying attention to it. These are some of the tests that we would give people to try to diagnose them. So there are things like cube counting and paper cutting, right-left discrimination. There's a sorting test. Dressing disability is exactly what it sounds like. We talked about that with Janet, right? And then let me stick this in slideshow just so we can see it a little bit better. So you can see the most probable areas for these things, like here is where the issues are. And here are some of the things they'll struggle with depending on essentially where those lesions are. So, right left confusion, spatial ability drawing, things along those lines. And then here are more of those neuropsych type tests that we would give people. So if we're trying to see, can they recognize tactile form? There's a form board we can use that has tactile patterns. Contralateral neglect, we try to get them to do some line bisection. Various different things for visual perception. For language, we can do the token test. And apraxia has a specific test called the Kimura box. So again, neuropsychologists have had to be pretty creative to come up with ways to test for some of these things, right? Because you're not gonna be able to test something like how are they doing in a tactile way from just a written assessment, right? It's not gonna happen. All righty. So I think what I'd like to do is kind of go back to our traditional kickoff here. And start with the case study of Rachel, which is on Ogden chapter 11. And then what we'll do is we'll do the case of Danielle on Monday, just to kind of break it up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and pass around these case study sheets. Mayu and Jasmine, you all will be, let me stop sharing. You all will be number 1, and I will give you a copy of the case study worksheet that you can fill in. So this should open a copy of it for you too. And so you all will do identifying info and background / history. I'll go ahead and put you in a breakout room. Okay. Other folks, I'm gonna come around here and think about how to do this. Let's have the 2 of y'all do the symptoms. Yeah, it's right on the desk. So it's very good grab it. And we'll, what's that? If you want to do it digitally, cool. So let's have the 3 of y'all ready if you want to come join these folks. Do the testing results and diagnosis. And then you have the 2 of y'all do impact on the animals. And then the 2 of y'all do treatment and events. And I'm gonna run back into my office because I forgot the thing of driving standards, but we should have time while like all are working on it. It should be chapter 11. And it's Rachel. And I'll erase my stuff so that folks can write everywhere they need to write. And I will be right back. Actual markers. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, there's like no good way.
And now these desks are separated.
I don't get it, other than like maybe someone thought they were cooties. I don't know.
They're like, this is social distancing.
Yeah, we're going back to social distancing. Even though it doesn't do that much. Mhm. Has everybody written up everything they need to? No, okay, cool. Sorry to take time. I'm in another world over here, so I want to make sure you all weren't just waiting for me. Oh, thank you. Is this the one? No, I think my husband got me this one. There's one that I have that came from the Museum of Natural History, but this is not it. His office is upstairs in Clark, I think. Yeah, no problem. So many things. All right, welcome back to our Zoom, folks. We are almost done. Getting everything on the board in here. I am going to sign onto my phone so I can show everything. But that means I'm gonna mute everything up here, so that we, don't end up with the horrible, horrible echo. So give me a second. If I unmute, then folks on Zoom should be able to hear me now, which is good. And we can start talking through everything while we finish up. So hang on just a sec and I'll switch this back over. I was doing some grading stuff and didn't want to violate FERPA, so. Alrighty, so our first group, Jasmine and Mayu, tell us about the identifying info and the background and history for our person. If you want, you can just copy paste it into the chat. Or you can unmute, whatever's easier for y'all.
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, sorry. I think I shared the document. Do you want me to share it on the screen?
Yeah, you can go ahead and just do that. That'll be easier.
Okay, cool. Okay. So for identifying info, we had Danielle, a 36-year-old female. Her birthday was 23 February 1966. We saw it on her assessment report. And she was the mother of twins. She had a
Oh,
subarachnoid.
shoot. I'm gonna stop you right here, Jasmine. Did everybody else do Rachel? Okay, it's okay. You guys did the wrong one, but we'll just save this for Monday because
Oh
we're gonna
no,
do
we did
every other
both.
Monday.
Sorry.
Oh, you did both. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
just talk about Rachel then.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
that's
My
okay.
bad.
No, we'll just like I said, we'll save it for Monday, and everybody else in here was
Okay.
having a panic attack, so it's all good.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Uh, so it was Rachel, 14 years old. She was young. For her background information, she was the top student in her school. She enjoyed music, art, swimming, aerobics, and skiing. She also had a good relationship with her mother, who was 35. She had a very active working and social life. But her parents were divorced and her father was Maori. I didn't get a little more info because, like I said, we did both of it.
That's
So,
okay.
yeah, we started with Danielle. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Like I said, just save this for Monday and we'll just
Okay.
assign you that section for Monday since you've already done it. So that's awesome. Let me see if I have anything else about Rachel. I have that she had a mild TBI 2 months earlier, so a mild concussion. Um, yeah, you got that. Yeah, we talked about the Maori people before. They are the indigenous peoples of New Zealand, about 15% of the population.
And in particular, these folks, her father lived in the rural part of New Zealand, and her mom was a Pakeha, which is the Maori word for non-Maori people. It's basically like Muggle for a non-magical person. Okay. Um, and then did the folks who did symptoms talk about what happened to her? Okay, cool. So then I'll just switch over to that. And if you want, Jasmine, you can stop sharing screen. Awesome, thank you. And I will flip my camera and come on over.
So, symptoms going to change like the time of our accident?
Like this. There we go.
That led into kind of the next night that stated that she talked about headache and had trouble concentrating. That over time, she showed a personality change by becoming irritable, morose, and it really emphasized like her lethargic behavior and lack of energy she kept bringing up. And she became less social and willing to see her friends. She exhibited depressive symptoms, talked about suicide a little bit. She still talked about it. She really had massive memory issues, which really pushed her more to this part rather than as well rounded.
Yeah, and I don't remember exactly. Do y'all remember what happened when she was skiing? Did she just fall? She ran into a tree? Jeez. Not good. No. All right, so next up we should have testing results. Sorry to people who are watching this later. It's probably going to make you seasick. All right, so go ahead and walk us through. Yeah, and I really like that you all emphasize this, that one of the things we have to do when we look at scores is look at them in context, right? So she was a very intelligent person who was really good at art. And so the idea that she's just having like average on this figure is low for her, right? And like this is something we saw before with the doctor, right, who developed the disorder and dementia. And it's also something I kind of snuck into one of the case studies on your midterm, right? That one of the guys was a nuclear physicist. And so he was scoring in the average range. And so for him, that was probably pretty low, right? You have to be fairly smart to be a nuclear physicist. Yeah. Alrighty. And then again, sorry about seasickness for folks. What was the diagnosis here? Yep, exactly. And that can be pre-existing, co-occur, right? Happen as a result of the recovery process. So part of your job as a neuropsychologist is to like suss that out. All right, what did they do to try to treat her and did it work? Oh, good, oh, good. Right. So yeah, it could take a long time to recover, right? If you recover. And she was lucky that she was young. She was a pretty healthy person before this happened, right? So she did get a lot of recovery. All right, and then what's her impact on her life and family? Rock, paper, scissors.
While she was there, she was fascinated by her bio stories about, like, her culture. She returned to her mom's call in January for school. She said that she felt fresh. There was a careful social schedule arranged so that
Yeah, exactly. And this part always sort of cracks me up a little, right? Because like this is how we treated stuff back in the day, right? The 17 or the 1800s, if you were really sick, they would be like, go live by the seaside and the fresh air will make you better. But like in her case, it worked, right? And it's not because the seaside actually made her better, but it was the rest and it was the connection, right? And feel, I'm sure that helped with her depression as well. All right. Flipping stuff around here.
Okay. I am back over here, but I gotta turn the speakers back on. There we go. Awesome. So great job. Let me see if I have anything else to fill in. I think you all did a really good job. One of the only things that I have that we didn't talk about was how important psychoeducation was for her as part of her treatment. So telling people about what happened and what to expect can be one of the most powerful things you can do as a psychologist in general, to be perfectly honest, but also as a neuropsychologist, is like, you had a TBI, here's what to expect, right? That can be really important. So for example, when someone has panic disorder, just doing psychoeducation about what a panic attack is and how it's your body's fight or flight system overreacting can help people to have panic attacks less because they understand them. So when they start to feel those symptoms, they don't freak out. They're like, oh, my therapist told me this is what's happening, right? And it's not perfect, obviously, but certainly can help quite a bit. I have some videos about TBIs, and actually let me share screen on Zoom here. So when we think of traumatic brain injuries, we tend to think of the NFL, right? We tend to think of veterans. And I have a video about veterans, but then I also have one I want to start with about domestic violence survivors, and like trigger warning for anyone that is something that you have experienced. But I think it's really important to talk about these other contexts that can come up in, right? And people don't talk about the fact that like, not only can you be psychologically traumatized by being abused, but you can also experience TBIs, just like people in these other situations. So I'm gonna go ahead and open a new tab so it's not weird and small.
About football players and brain trauma, and now research is being done on domestic violence survivors too.
In fact, researchers in Phoenix released a study showing traumatic brain injury is rampant among them, especially women in homeless shelters. The women are now getting help to return to productive.
I'm just gonna turn off their closed captions. There we go. Also, this like brought me back because I grew up in the Detroit area. These are the Detroit news anchors that I saw growing up. So I was like, ah, hi guys.
Lives.
Debbie Davenport needs help navigating through her day. She has trouble with balance after a lifetime of head trauma that started when she was 7.
I've had at least 70 more blows to the head, or had my head slammed down onto the cement or into walls.
She was part of Barrow's brain trauma study spearheaded by Dr. Glynis Zeman and social worker Ashley Bridwell. Of 115 homeless women studied, 88% had too many blows to the head to count. 81% had lost consciousness at least once. Few saw a doctor.
You start looking at
So that threshold of losing consciousness is actually what they used to use to define even like a mild TBI. They've since extended past that because they realize you can have the symptoms even without losing consciousness. But that's sort of an important marker.
At those cases, and you have to ask yourself, you know, how many of these people were failing as a result of their cognitive impairment.
Although it is a difficult challenge at the very beginning when patients have a lot of symptoms that have been long-standing, there really are ways to improve people's lives.
More than 375 people like Debbie have come through this Barrow program. Grants cover what patients' insurance doesn't. Debbie says it turned her life of abuse around.
I've learned that I'm strong enough to take care of it myself. I'm strong enough to know where it came from and to tell people no.
The
Dr.
dog said no.
Zeman and
Great
Ashley
there.
Bridwell published their paper on the study in 2017. They say they didn't find the results too surprising because they see the results of repeated concussions every single day, but they do want to educate others about what they see happening.
And so it's so important to know that, like, not only do survivors of domestic violence end up homeless a lot of times because their abuser is the one, right, who has all the money on purpose. They do that on purpose, right? But also that these cognitive difficulties can make it that much more difficult for them to find a job. So this next one is about veterans. And this will relate to the email I sent out earlier today. So Dr. Stoley is bringing back a veteran who has the Service Dog of the Year from last year. And he's going to talk about his story. And then after that, if you're free at 1, they're going to have the puppy raisers on campus, which was like my favorite academic event I did last year. The puppies are so adorable. But just thinking about, you know, what are the implications for veterans, and that like these service dogs are not just like leader dogs for the blind, but sometimes they stabilize them, things like this. So this is going to talk about combat related brain injuries.
As he waits to be tested in a brain injury study, Dan Hoff shows Dr. Michael Lipton photos from the Iraq War.
Oh my God.
May 16th, 2005, the day his platoon was ambushed by 2 roadside bombs.
So what happened to the guys in this vehicle?
Everybody walked away.
Really?
Dan walked away too, but not before being knocked to the ground and suffering a concussion, also known as mild traumatic brain injury.
And this is the signature injury of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars because of these roadside bombs. In addition to sometimes being knocked off your feet, when that concussive blast goes through your brain, it can make your brain essentially move around in your skull and cause brain trauma just from that. So unfortunately, this is like one of the most common things seen in vets who were in either Iraq or Afghanistan.
A major problem that is faced by concussion and mild traumatic brain injury patients in general is that these people look externally very normal, yet they may have profound problems functioning.
Dan, a combat engineer, continued his job of clearing routes of improvised explosive devices, or IEDs. But he started suffering from disturbing symptoms of concussion, which continued even after he returned home to Ohio.
If I don't write things down, they may not necessarily get done, because if I rely on just my memory, I can't rely on it. It's not reliable anymore.
Now, at 35, Dan says these and other symptoms like headaches and sensitivity to light prevent him from working in law enforcement as he did before the war. And when symptoms affect interactions with his family, he explains it to them like this.
This isn't because of what you guys are doing. This isn't because I don't want to be with you guys. It's because I have had these injuries and these things that have happened to me that are preventing me.
Dan wanted answers, but conventional tests like CAT scans cannot visualize damage in most people who have mild traumatic brain injury. That's why Dan and his younger brother Nick Hoff decided to travel to Albert Einstein College of Medicine, where Dr. Lipton uses a highly specialized type of MRI called diffusion tensor imaging to visualize structural changes in the brain.
Whenever you see a triangle, you're going to press the left button.
In a study Dr. Lipton is conducting, veterans who've had concussions and their brothers who were never in combat are compared with each other. The study is supported by a grant from the Resurrecting Lives Foundation.
You can adjust the goggles, make them fit your face.
The team images the brothers' brains. conducts genetic tests on their blood, and cognitive tests to measure brain function. Dr. Lipton explains that while currently available therapies can help people to compensate for functional problems, there is no specific method or drug to biologically fix the deficits.
So by seeing specifically what is going on inside their brain, we're opening a window of opportunity that allows the patients potentially to be able to see or be shown that there is something truly wrong with them that explains their symptoms. But it also allows us as researchers and as clinicians to identify targets for therapy.
Dr. Lipton expects to have preliminary study results later this year. Meanwhile, Dan is looking ahead. He's returning to college with the goal of becoming a veteran service officer so he can assist vets to secure the benefits that they've earned.
So yeah, it's the really interesting thing is, like, the grant they got was from a foundation, right, which is typically a nonprofit. The government does have grants to study these things, but even though they're studying veterans, sometimes the money can't come from them. This next one is going to talk more about how it actually affects the neurons, and sort of research being done related to that.
In the lab of Dr. Marta Lipinski, researchers are working to better understand the short and long-term effects of traumatic brain injury. They've learned the initial primary injury triggers cellular and biological changes in the brain that spread to other areas of the brain over time, causing a secondary injury.
So what happens is that typically when you have a brain injury, you have what's called the initial coup, which is where or coop, or what it's called too, where your brain hits, your head hits something, your brain is like jello inside your skull, so it sort of sloshes forward and hits the skull. Then as your head reverberates back, what happens is your brain then bounces back and hits the back of your skull. So like if you hit your frontal lobes, you're also probably going to have some issues in your occipital lobes. Your occipital lobes, you're also probably going to have some issues in your frontal lobes. And this is why a lot of people like see stars when they have a concussion, because the occipital lobe is often involved.
After people recover from this initial stage, they can have very profound long-term consequences, and this can involve the immediate disability, cognitive or motor disability. But even people who fully recover have higher predisposition to neurodegenerative diseases decades later.
In a recently published study conducted.
And so this is why things like CTE are so problematic, which is something you get from repeated head injuries, say multiple tours of combat or being in the NFL for a long time. It makes you like more vulnerable. It's essentially like the equivalent of having an autoimmune disease, right? Like one of the problems with having an autoimmune disease is you're more susceptible to other things like colds and things like that, right? Same thing for if you've had, especially multiple TBIs, your brain is more susceptible to stuff that might not affect other people as severely.
In mice, Dr. Lipinski showed that traumatic brain injury inhibits an important cellular housecleaning process in the brain called autophagy. After the injury, the recycling function of the brain's immune system cells slowed down dramatically.
This process is actually becoming inhibited and doesn't function. So at a time when the cell really has lots of damaged parts and should be degrading and recycling them, the recycling process is not functioning either and makes the injury worse.
In follow-up research, Dr. Lipinski is collaborating with University of Maryland scientists in the School of Pharmacy, the Institute of Genome Sciences, and at College Park to better understand these long-term effects.
And this is really common in TBI research, that it's interdisciplinary. You saw that even with the first study they talked about where they had a neurologist and a social worker working together, right? Because it affects so many aspects of people's life, it's really important. I think I might have told you all before that while I was at the VA, I worked on an interdisciplinary team for TBIs, and it was the coolest process I was a part of because we would all be in the room for the eval together. And then I would take them to the side and do like memory tests without distraction. And then we'd all come back together and discuss the person's case and like what's going on, what treatment should we get them. So it'd be like me, the neurologist, a neurological nurse, and a social worker. And we'd all be in the room with the patient. And so they didn't have to come see us 4 times, right? We were just all right there.
Inhibition of autophagy per se in the neural tissue pretty much causes neurodegeneration. Autophagy is also very important for prevention of neurodegenerative diseases. It's inhibited in Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease and pretty much all other neurodegenerative diseases. So what we're looking at is whether inhibition of autophagy after TBI is the link that causes long-term consequences and causes people to develop neurodegenerative diseases much later in life as a consequence.
The ultimate goal of the research is to develop new treatments for the long-term effects of traumatic brain injury.
There isn't really much you can do about the primary injury because it is instantaneous. So prevention would be the key, but we can study and we can try to understand the secondary injury, and we can try develop treatments that can lessen or prevent it.
For the University of Maryland School of Medicine, I'm Larry Roberts.
And like she said, prevention is really the key. The problem with prevention is we don't have a good way to do it yet. So for example, they've developed better helmets. You even see this in the MLB, right? Because if you get hit in the head by a 99-mile-per-hour fastball, it's not great for your brain. It's now, in addition to the batting helmet, it actually sort of comes here and protects the side of your face too, right? Because there's brain here too. You know, in the NFL, they've developed better helmets, and actually some of the pressure tests they did with chips in the helmets has been used in research to benefit veterans. But the problem is your brain is still sloshing around, right? So I don't think I'll be able to find this video again because I've never been able to find it again. But the guy that the movie Concussion is about, the one who sort of recognized what CTE was and tried to like bring it to the NFL, he was on a news show to talk about it. And he had 2, you know, Jello brains in jars. And one was just the brain in the jar, and the other one was wrapped in bubble wrap. And he smacked both of them with his hand, and the brain jumps around almost as much, right? Because there's only so much cushioning you can do because of the nature of the event itself. The last one I'll show, we probably won't get through the whole thing, but at least show you snippets of it. Oh, we might get through the whole thing, is someone talking about what it's like to live with someone with a TBI. And also PTSD. So since we're always talking about like the impact on family, I thought this video was a really good one to show. Because it's not easy.
At Kroger, everyone wins when it comes to savings because you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup.
I'm Brooke. My husband's named David. He's a United States Marine. He was deployed twice to Iraq, 2006 to 2007, 2007 to 2008. He has TBI. He was hit by 5 mortars while standing post. The mortars dropped directly under him, and when it came up, the post took the shrapnel, but the percussion waves come up and got him, knocked him out. My husband now has extreme PTSD. He has seizures due to the TBI as well as PTSD. His back is actually fractured. He's got 2 discs that were crushed beyond repair. He doesn't know what...
Back and knee injuries are also really common injuries from these wars, not only from these sort of concussive blasts, but also because a lot of these wars were done on foot, like going from house to house in a village, right, to look for terrorists. And the modern soldier carries about 100 pounds of gear on them. So it can really mess up your back and your knees.
What he ate last night, but he can remember what he ate 3 weeks ago. The loss of hearing, he can't hear half the time. You know, you have to like scream at him to get his attention. The light sensitivity, the lights being outside, even on a cloudy day, he has to wear sunglasses or he'll develop a massive migraine. He has very short tempers, which, I mean, it's hard to know what the triggers are, because it could be a slamming of a door and it just spooks him. He has to have someone with him at almost 24 hours a day, or at least an earshot, because if he forgets where he is, he flips out. And then that's where the PTSD comes in. He'll have a flashback. And if he has a flashback, you know how PTSD is, it turns him into a monster. And my husband is a hero, not a monster. I have learned now to decipher where the PTSD, the TBI monster is versus my husband.
So I thought that was such a important thing, is like, that's her life, right? Is that like this man she loves came back with this other thing inside of him caused by this traumatic brain injury, caused by his PTSD, and she now has to sort of like walk on eggshells sometimes. The last thing I want to say is talking about sensitivity to light. That was really common among the folks that I saw in that TBI clinic. A lot of them will get migraines and have to spend days in darkened rooms. And then also she talked about loss of hearing. That's fairly common, but also common was tinnitus, where you get like ringing in your ears. And that can be really hard psychologically as well. I know someone with tinnitus, and they just like wanted to bang their head on the wall sometimes, because it's just like constant noise, and it could take on different forms. For the person I know, it sounded like a squeaky hamster wheel. So if you can imagine just hearing that all the time. Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk more about this on Monday, and we will do the full case of Danielle as well.
There's
The meeting with you.